Margie Walcroft sat on the bed, feeling numb, not numbness because she was hooked up to and for. Through which in turn the medicine came, which helped her control the pain, but emotional numbness. She had never thought that she could have such feelings for anyone. This is not just one simple emotion, but a whole whirlwind. Sometimes pity prevails, then regret, then anger, relief, confusion. When she thinks about different things, she feels different things. But today, to do what she just did, she needs numbness. It's her fault, but she meant well. Emotionally, she feels guilty for all this, and it's hard for her to deal with it. She keeps a terrible secret, but the events that started it all, it was someone who didn't do something, but now she is deeply ashamed. I'll get this done in the next few days, the pretty young lawyer said, putting an envelope with the papers Margie had just signed into her briefcase. The notary has already left, but at the moment your will has been drawn up. Margie nodded at the pretty blonde. The idea of a lawyer is still a bit new to her. Even after she carefully watched the TV series Los Angeles Law and then Boston Lawyers. And it amused her. Moreover, the woman did such work for people in hospitals. Maybe Bill Shakespeare was wrong. Thanks, Margie said. I am grateful for your advice. I didn't know how to explain everything. It's okay, ma'am, she replied, smiling, getting up and straining her clothes. The legal language bothers everyone. That's one of the reasons I had to go to college. God bless you, Margie confirmed. Call me if you need anything, the lawyer said, swinging Margie's legs slightly through the blanket. I hope that calmed you down a little. Margie just made a face. I'll visit you in a couple of weeks, okay? The lawyer asked. Thanks. Margie nodded. Tell the nurse when you come. I'll try not to be stoned. I hate how my brain works from all this. Margie gestured at the many tubes and wires leading to her body. I'll try. Have a nice day. With these words, the lawyer left, heading to another patient in the hospital room. Margie watched the woman walk out the door inside. The pain was coming back. A faint, constant pain and weakness were climbing up her. She slightly reduced the dose of painkillers so that she could talk to a lawyer while in her right mind. She reached out and pressed a button on the edge of the bed. Yes, how can I help you? A thin voice came over the intercom on the bed. Yes, I need to sit in my chair. It takes a little. Son, we'll send someone as soon as we can, the voice said, followed by a mute sound. Margie really wanted to smoke. Margie smoked 2 cigarettes, assuring the sweet but bored orderly that she would be fine. The weakness had not yet set in and the pain was bearable. He walked away, probably to play with the phone alone or have a snack, she thought. She was already halfway through the pack that her friend Cynthia had secretly given her. She wasn't going to take anything else from Sin, which she made clear to her. It's funny. She's wanted to smoke since her husband forced her to quit in 1993. But she didn't dare start again even after he died 5 years ago. When you have stage 3 stomach cancer and the 4th is around the corner,
You no longer care how bad things can be with.
your lungs. Sometimes, if she knew that the right orderly was on duty, she would settle down outside. With the wind carried away the smoke of evidence and smoke a cigarette with pleasure. The orderly knew everything, but so far he had not seen it. Nothing terrible was happening. Margie didn't expect him to work here for much longer, but until then, if she wanted to smoke a cigarette, she would. Margie has been sitting and thinking for the last half hour. What she wants to do is a waste of time. She knows that, but she feels the need strike back. She doesn't know how to explain it, maybe to vent my pain, but in the last 20 minutes, she decided to make a phone call and damn those attacking bulls. Her hand reached for her purse, and she saw that her hands were shaking again. She narrowed her eyes resolutely and reached into her huge canvas purse, where she kept everything she thought she might need for a short walk. Rummaging through her bag, she found a towel, a compact umbrella, 2 small change wallets, a dog collar, paperback novels, and a bag of hard candy without sugar, and of course found her phone at the bottom. Without thinking twice, she found the right number and pressed the call button. Watching her finger hover in the air above the phone, listening to the beeps, she gathered her courage and wished she had dared to smoke a 3rd cigarette. Hello? Her only daughter's voice came on the other end of the line. "Hi, Mary," Margie replied in turn, restraining herself from bursting into a planned tirade. "Mom, hi," Mary said without much joy in her voice. In fact, Margie thought she didn't have much of a voice. Tearful. "How are you doing today?" "Oh, they're better and worse," Margie replied. "I had some business to attend to, and I'd like to talk to you since you're not visiting or calling me." "Mom, I'm so sorry," Mary pleaded, feeling guilty. "It's just that my life is such a mess right now." "I don't doubt it," Margie said after a pause. Thanks to Kimmy and Junior, she was more than aware of what was going on. "I'll try to get here as soon as possible." "Okay," Margie added. "I need to talk to you anyway." "I don't doubt it," Margie said. "I have no doubt." There was silence on Mary's part. "I want to ask you something first, Mary, and then I need to tell you something," Margie said, moving forward. "Can you be patient with your mother?" It wasn't really a question. "Yes," the daughter replied. "Why?" Margie asked. Her tone wasn't questioning. She just wanted to hear the rationale one more time. Every time she did it, it made her angry, but she wanted it one more time. In the last, she needed anger to get through this. Mary evaded the question. "Don't," Margie said, softly, summoning all the strength her anger gave her. "Don't play this game with me. Not with me. Don't you dare." Okay, Mary sighed, resigned to having to face her mother's wrath again. She had to get over it. She would need Margie's help, and very soon. "I must be tired," Mary began. There were children too much. Kimmy is almost a teenager, and she had so many complaints. She questioned everything and was constantly rude to me. Baby Mary is a solid source of energy. And I'm tired of cleaning up after all the time. Michael wasn't around as much as I needed to. And when he was, he always had a drink in his hand. Margie listened intently, holding the phone to her ear. "I didn't want to start. I really didn't want to know," Mary explained. "It was the only respite I had. Twice a week I went out for groceries and did a little shopping. It was nice to leave the apartment and not be a mom for a few hours." "I remember that," Margie added. "I met Kurt at the deli where I stopped on my way to the store." Mary explained again. It seemed to her that she explained this to her mother all the time. "He thought I was working there and tried to give me his order when I passed by." Margie heard a smile in Mary's voice at the memory. He was different from Mike. Mary continued. "Kurt was so positive in his character. He always made people reach out to him. He was so cute." Margie noted, "I was. He was an assistant vice president at QMAC, traveled and talked to people all over the Middle East." Mary said, "He was so different from Mike. Mike was just a truck driver, you know." And here's the comparison. Margie noted, Mike was missing for 14 hours a day, sleeping for 6, and when he was there and awake, he always had a beer in his hand. He paid attention to the girls, helped Kimmy with her homework, which I've never been able to do. Margie remembered how Mary went to school, being a solid middle-class person. "But he never had time for me," Mary complains. "I'm so tired of this kind of life." Margie heard Mary sigh. "I was going to get back to work," Mary said. "The younger one is going to study further in college. And I want to leave the house. Anywhere. I spent too much time in this tiny box with screaming kids with their music, with Kimmy's attitude." Margie missed that part. She knew her. But Kurt was different. Bright, happy. Mary finished. "You made me happy. I really needed to be happy." "But you didn't tell him," Margie accused, stating the facts she knew in an even voice. "No," Mary said, lowering her voice. "I let Kurt think I was an unemployed waitress. He's never seen my ring. The first time I wore a glove, thereafter, I was taking off the ring." Margie's eyes narrowed. "At the same time, I didn't want to sleep with him," Mary said. "He was just like that. Cute. He never put pressure on me. He didn't say that I should do this and that I didn't have to pick up the children, take them somewhere, clean up after them. In general, Kurt was different. What I needed." Margie listened in silence. "Kurt was waiting for me at that cafe when I told him what time I'd be there. He was waiting for me. There was this important man here who had money, Who could choose anyone? And he was waiting for me. If I had said I would be at Delhi on Thursday, around 2, he would have been there. If I had said I would come at 3 o'clock on Sunday morning, he would have been there for me. For my sake, I know that. Such attention it captures, Mary said, calming down. I needed that attention, not as Mommy, not as Mary, Mike's truck driver's wife, not as a woman picking up her child from school, just me. Mary paused, and it seemed to Margie that she was pulling herself together. The first time we made love, Kurt was just, he made an offer. Would you like to take dessert to my house? Mary said, her voice sounding both regretful and animated. Margie didn't understand how she did it. Then everything is simple. It was developing. Margie knew how it was. Her husband was charming too, at least in her understanding. Mary's charm looked a little different, and Kurt didn't know you were married until that moment. Margie asked, anger trembling in her voice. No, Mary admitted. I told you Kurt didn't know I was married at all. I used my maiden name, Walcroft. Margie knew about it, but she still got mad. Every time she thought about it. For her, it was a deception, pure and uncomplicated. Mary was ashamed, and she hid her identity. Margie has never understood how you can be ashamed of being a mother and married to a man who is trying his best. How often did you sleep with Kurt? Margie asked. After that first time, Mary asked. Margie was silent, waiting for the answer that soon followed. After that first time, it took about 2 weeks before I slept with him again. We both really wanted it. Eek, saw it off. She was playing hard to get. I felt guilty? Not guilty. Enough, Margie thought. It's been 2 weeks. Mary sighed. Then we waited another week after that. Second time? Margie said nothing. Then it was constant. Mary continued. They began to meet in his apartment. So you've been sneaking out for a couple of hours here and there. For a week? Margie asked for confirmation. Mostly, Mary always answered this question like this. Often twice, sometimes 3 times, sometimes none. Go on, this, almost everything, Mary said. No, not all of them, Margie said, trying to keep the growl out of her voice. Basically, she succeeded. How did the end begin? I had a delay. Margie hated to admit it again. She was there for 5 weeks, then 6. I have a regular period sometime, so Margie waited. But at 7 weeks old, I went and bought a urine test. Mary continued. It turned out to be positive. All urine tests purchased were positive. Mary did 4 tests over the course of 2 days. I didn't know from home, Mary confirmed. This ignorance it made everything homey. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. It took me a few days to get up the courage to tell Mike that I was pregnant again. I didn't tell him what might be from Kurt. It remains in my memory. That conversation. Margie could hear the sadness in Mary's voice. He was silent. And I could see that he was thinking about the cost of having another child. He is thinking about how to arrange everything. And we were already in the red because of medical bills and child support. And all he said was, I love you, darling. We'll find a way. Do you think it will be a girl or a boy? Margie understood that. She also understood that hiding from her husband that the child might not be from him was not for the faint of heart. Unfortunately, Mary was able to hide this from Mike. When did you decide to leave? Margie asked. I still don't think I've really decided. I just did it. Margie was waiting again. Mary should have said that. Kurt was going to the Middle East again, Mary said. He said that this would happen, that his 6-month internship was ending, and his boss wanted him to return to work. You know, Kurt speaks 4 languages. Margie didn't really care if he spoke Martian. Kurt suddenly asked me, do you want to come with me? He was on his way to Kuwait. My passport has been fine since we went to Canada that time. That was the first thought that came to my mind. After his question, can I go? Margie was gnashing her teeth. Not a single thought about the girls at home. I swear I didn't think much about it, Mary said, guilt clearly audible in her voice. I know how wrong this is. Later that day, I realized how wrong it was. I knew it. I know. And yet you went on? You go on. Margie thought. I said yes. Mary regained the strength in her voice. I said yes. got up from his bed and said that I would come back and we could leave. I know how wrong that sounds, Mary confessed, but I really didn't think about it. All that. That was what I wanted. I wanted to be away from my tiny, isolated life stuck in this apartment, doing the same unpleasant things over and over again. And Mike only occasionally showed up early, in the morning and late at night. And that was the way out. There was silence again, and Margie waited, and I wouldn't have to explain about the baby in my womb. Mary said this with a strange note in her voice. I thought I could do it somehow to get Kurt to agree to this, to recognize the child as his own, if he is not even his own. I thought it might work out then. Mike and me. I was always so tired around Mike. We are not. Margie fell silent. Anyway, I went back to the apartment, to Mike's apartment. I don't know. I've been trying to figure out how to make it so that to let Mike and the girls know. I kept walking around and couldn't figure out how to do it. I hadn't left yet, and I already felt so guilty. But not guilty enough to end this affair, Margie thought. My feet brought me to the apartment by themselves. As soon as I got there, I just stopped. Mary said this part was easier for her. I was thinking about what to do for maybe 2 seconds. As soon as I walked through the door and looked around this tiny room, and everything I was struggling with on the way here appeared to me in crystal clear form. I didn't need anything. Kurt said he would buy everything I needed. He knew that I was poor anyway, and I didn't have much. I never let him know what I had in my house and Mike's apartment. Kurt thought I was a waitress, carefree and approachable. I never corrected him. I didn't need anything from Mike, Mary continued. At that moment, I wanted nothing but to be free. Kimmy was at school, and Junior was with a neighbor. But if I stayed there for a long time, the neighbor would come. She always knew when we were at home. That's why I wrote a note. I don't even remember what I wrote. Mary declared. I know what you wrote. Margie said. I saw it. There was silence on the line again. Mary didn't know how to answer. You told Mike and the girls you were leaving. That it's become too much for you. You're 2 months pregnant, and this is too much for you. I told them not to. Look for you, Margie told her daughter. Yes, that's right, Mary confirmed. Margie was silent again. She knew Mary would pick up the story. I took my passport, wrote a note, took off my ring, and left. Mary continued. I threw the phone into the sewer grate. It seemed to me that I was getting free. Margie felt the whirlwind of emotions again. None of them were positive. It helped her think that she had made the right decision, which she would soon tell her daughter about. And then what? Margie asked. I returned to Kurtz's apartment and said with a big smile, Here I am, she replied. We were both so happy. I was also free with the man I was sure I loved. It turned out that I really loved him. The whole thing. The next day we packed his things, which were few. They made some purchases for me. Went to the airport and boarded his company's plane. I met his boss, and he turned out to be nice. Then we flew away. And then what happened? Margie asked. She always asked, but Mary never told. I don't want to talk about it. Mom, Mary said with a warning in her voice. I don't care, Margie said, echoing her daughter's tone. I want to know. We had a baby. Okay? Mary said, anger in her voice. Then we got married. We were happy. Is that enough? No, not enough. Margie came back. I need answers. Mom, Mary sighed. Maybe later, okay? There won't be any later. Probably, Margie thought. You have to answer me, Mary Margaret. Margie wasn't happy. I know, Mom. Mary confirmed. I know. Only not now, okay? Margie gritted her teeth. Then she remembered that she had other questions. Tell me, why did you come to Kimmy's wedding? After you told me about it, I was stunned when you told me. All the things that I imagined were happening to my girls. I know I've given up something valuable. Mom, believe me, I regretted it. That's what I regretted every day. And I had no one to talk to about it. These years, the missed moments, I was upset when I continued. You've given up on them, Margie thought. After that, you shouldn't be surprised anymore. But when you told me, everything came flooding back to me. Mary spoke in more detail. Everything that I missed, everything that happened. I know I'm the one who left. But I missed the mom. I missed my babies. Margie was shaking harder now. I decided that I had to come. How did you get inside? Margie asked. I used your name. You what? I beat Kurt, who asked to check in with me while he was parking. Mary said with guilt in her voice. I didn't have your invitation, but I convinced the man on the podium that I was you. Mary, Margie growled, her trembling now reaching her head. I know, Mom. I am so sorry. Margie was trying to pull herself together emotionally and physically. If the orderly had looked across the yard, he would have seen her shaking. Why? Why did you take her with you? Margie asked, tilting the phone so she wouldn't breathe loudly into it. She was convinced that in the presence of children, you need to control yourself, and she thought Mary was acting very, very childish. I didn't know Kurt was back until the day before yesterday. I told him that I was going to go to a friend's wedding when he was abroad, and he finished work earlier, and he wanted to go because he wanted to do something to me. Kurt was like that. He always wanted to be with me, Mary said slowly. Margie noted again in the way Mary spoke that was and wanted were in the past tense. I couldn't say no to him. It's just that Kurt has such a character, and I thought maybe even though I was planning on just staying in the parking lot, but with Kurt ought to come in otherwise he'll start asking questions. And I saw how many people were there. Kimmy is so many friends. Mom, she grew up so beautiful. Mike and I did a good job. Margie said, her voice ringing with subtext. Yes, it is, Mary said regretfully. I'm glad. Why are you wearing white? Margie asked, although it was a small thing, against the background of the ongoing farce. Too many people asked Kimmy, and no one knew. It wasn't white, Mary protested. Just a summer light brown cotton jacket with a matching skirt. And my blouse was white. The suit only looked white in the sunlight. They look very white to me. Margie thought. You don't wear white to someone else's wedding, Mary. You know that. Mom, it wasn't. Wait, it's perfectly acceptable for American women to wear what I wear in the Middle East. The trembling did not subside. Now Margie's phone was banging against her cheek. You're lucky Junior didn't see you, Margie said. Why? This girl, the first girl you named after. Yourself. Margie found it hard to contain herself. Now her other hand was bouncing on her lap. Very, very angry at you. She does not submit to her father's control. Mary didn't say anything. The silence gave Margie a chance to calm down a little. She pressed her left hand to her knees, trying to keep from trembling. Kimmy is better, but she doesn't understand you. Margie said after a while, she's not alone. Kimmy asks questions. Junior is not. Mike doesn't understand either. There was no response from the other end of the line. Mary, I think you need to stay away from them. Margie told her daughter, Mom, I need them, now that I've seen them. I thought about it. Mary stammered. You're a stupid little fool, Margie growled. Don't you dare hurt my granddaughters. Mary had nothing to say. Margie thought she heard a soft sob. It was difficult to determine. There was a ringing in my ears. You've already done so much harm to these girls, and all because you're such a selfish little cheater. I'm sorry, Mommy. Mary said it, so far away and very quietly. No, Margie growled, closing her eyes in concentration. You'll never be able to do it again. You made a decision like a grown-up girl, and you can't act like the child you are now. I don't know why. Margie had to stop. Rolling colors appeared behind her. Eyelids. I do not know what your father and I did wrong to make you do that, but you've been letting me think you're dead for 8 years. Your father died thinking like that. How could you? The phone was quiet. The metallic howl and Margie's ears grew louder, overshadowing everything else. You've hurt us all. Margie would have screamed if she could, but her breath didn't seem to be. Enough. We all loved you. Those girls loved you. Mike loved you, and you just ran away like it was some kind of stupid fairy tale. How could you do this to us? I'm sorry. Margie finally heard. Margie was sitting in an armchair trying to catch her breath and stop shaking. She grabbed her wrist with her left hand, trying to pull herself together. I should have told them when you called me. Margie confessed to her daughter. I knew I was wrong then, and I'm doubly wrong now. I lied to these girls and Mike without telling them anything. I've been keeping this lie for almost 3 years. I was just grateful that you came back. But now that I know more, and what you've done, Mary Margaret, you should have stayed away. Why is Margie so hot? It's a good day, but not as hot as all this. Mom, I couldn't. Mary said, and now Margie could hear her crying. I've missed you so much. I wanted to introduce you to my family. I wanted to share it with you. You should have known, and I felt so guilty for what I did. Margie sighed. That was Mary's reasoning. Margie never understood where she learned to think like that. I understand, Mary, Margie said. But you were just creating new secrets and putting them on top of other secrets. Now it's all fallen on you, and you've made me a part of it. Mom, I need help, Mary said, sobbing. What now, Margie thought. The 4-2 bounced when she was shaking, and the hole on the side of her stomach suddenly began to bother her. Margie waited for the child to express his needs. Kurt and me, I have to leave home next week, Mary said, her crying becoming more pronounced. I need to live somewhere. Kurt has frozen all assets, and I will only be able to get the money after the divorce. Margie immediately understood where this was going. You want to move into this house, Margie said, referring to the house she shared with her husband before his death, and then lived alone until she was sent to the terminal cancer ward. Please? Mary asked. What about little Mary? Margie asked, her mind suddenly clear. The trembling, pain, and sorrows forgotten. They didn't disappear, but no matter how angry Margie was at her daughter, she would still look after her third granddaughter, especially since Mary was so bad at this task. She's not with me. Mary's voice sounded subdued now, even more depressed. Kurt is going to get full custody in the divorce. If he can get it, he says he's afraid Mike might make some kind of claim. Margie didn't know how it could turn out, but maybe it's for the best that Mary won't be around her children, not with any of them. It's going to be very hard for her, Mom, Mary continued. She needs me. She doesn't understand what's going on, only in the most general terms, like the other Mary we know, Margie accused. Oh my God, Mom. Margie didn't have to think for more than a second. If little Mary is not with Mary, but with her father, then her decision has already been made. Mary, Margaret, you have no right to move into my house. Margie found the strength to say loudly into the phone, barely holding the phone to her mouth. Can you hear me? No. Emma. Well, I want you to know. I signed a new will today, Margie said, turning down the volume. The sound in her ears suddenly distracted her. It was all getting out of control. I'm giving the house to Junior. Next year, she will go to school next to him, and she may well live there. And if not, then let him do what he wants with it. The crying was barely audible over the noise, which was now becoming more like the roar of water. Most of my money goes to Kimmy, Margie continued. She needed to finish this. But don't worry, I'm giving most of the life insurance money to little Mary and the college trust, which you can't touch. Mary had a catch. Her breath, which seemed out of reach. There was simply not enough air. I'll tell Mike and the girls everything, Margie croaked. The whole story, as you told me, I will no longer participate in. Your lives. She's killing me. They have to get rid of the pain. Mary Margaret, the pain you keep causing Mommy now. And the last thing when I die, I want the girls to Mike's girls. I want them to come to my funeral so that everything is over. My loved ones should be grieving in my funeral. Not me, and not so that they doubt themselves in everything. Because if you leave, Mary Margaret, Junior won't leave. Your daughter hates you so much. And now her pain is more important to me than yours. Please, Mommy now, if you want things to change, little girl, then you have to start doing the right thing. Margie spat at her child. No more chances. It's the best thing you can do for your dying mother. That's the only thing I want from you. But right now, Margie thought she could hear sobbing from her phone. But I wasn't sure. However, she was almost done. I feel sorry for you now. Every mother is overwhelmed. We've been through it all, Margie said slowly. You're the only one I know who's run away from this. Fix it. Take your medicine. Grow up. Mary Margaret. Margie opened her eyes and tried to hold the phone in front of her. She managed to coordinate her, trembling enough to press the red hang up button on the screen. And then she was done. 10 minutes later, an orderly came around the corner and looked for Margie where he had left her earlier. She was sitting in an armchair. Her huge bag was lying next to her. Her head was lowered. He quickly walked up to her and turned his head to see what was happening to the emaciated woman. He was taught never to shout or yell, to be calm with patience. Excitement can have a bad effect on them. Margie, what is it? He asked, coming closer. Honey. Margie didn't react at all. Margie, what is it? He asked, kneeling down and putting his hand on her shoulder. Margie gasped, her eyes opening as if in surprise. She looked around for a moment, then fixed her gaze on the nurse. How are you, honey? The orderly asked. I could use a cigarette.